For over 6 decades, Bill Gaither has been a household name in gospel music, known for his soul-stirring songs, iconic performances, and leadership in the Gaither vocal band. He became more than a singer, he became a symbol of faith, love, and musical excellence. His work inspired millions, and his marriage to Marissa was seen as a shining example of a Christian union. Fans admired not just his music but his life, a man of strong beliefs, loyalty, and a seemingly unbreakable bond with his wife. But behind the scenes, things were far from perfect. Bill and Marissa Gaither's life, which seemed full of joy and peace, had silent cracks that only widened with time. Now at the age of 90, Bill has finally opened up about the quiet storm that raged inside his heart for many years. His words are not meant to accuse or blame, but to tell the truth. After decades of living in the public eye, he has chosen to speak honestly about the end of his marriage and the pain he tried to hide from the world. When people saw Bill and Marissa together, they saw what many believed was the ideal couple. Always smiling, always united, they seemed inseparable. They sang together, prayed together, and shared stages and family moments with grace. Whether it was at church, events, interviews, or special concerts, they appeared to support one another completely. Their relationship was not just personal, it was part of the Gaither brand. Fans followed their love story with admiration, believing that their strong faith kept them bonded through the ups and downs of fame and busy touring life. Bill often referred to Marissa as his rock, and she praised him as her inspiration. Together, they built not only a musical empire but a legacy of unity and belief. But as the years passed, things began to shift subtly at first. Friends and fans started to notice less public interaction between the two, fewer appearances, colder expressions, and eventually, the absence of Marissa at major events led to quiet whispers. Still, most believed they were simply aging gracefully, facing life's natural challenges. The truth, however, was more complicated than anyone imagined. In every marriage, even the strongest ones, moments of tension are normal. But for Bill and Marissa, those small cracks started to grow into something bigger. Bill began to feel more distant from the woman who had once been his closest partner. At first it was just subtle changes, less conversation at home, fewer laughs, and a growing sense of emotional space between them. While Bill continued to pour himself into his ministry and music, Marissa seemed to withdraw. She focused more on her own work and projects. Conversations that were once deep and joyful started to feel forced. Bill tried to fix it. He made efforts to reconnect, to recreate the bond they once had. But Marissa's reactions were cool, sometimes indifferent. She was no longer the supportive presence she had been for years. In interviews, her once bright smile faded, her answers became short, and her warmth toward Bill seemed to disappear. Still, Bill didn't want to accept that anything was truly wrong. He told himself it was just a phase. After all, they had been together for decades, but deep down he felt that something inside their marriage had shifted forever. To the public, Bill and Marissa continued to present themselves as a united couple. They attended events, stood side by side in photographs, and shared social media posts that looked happy on the surface. But behind those polished images was a deep emotional disconnect. Bill often found himself alone, both physically and emotionally. The long nights on the road, the quiet dinners at home, and the moments of silence between them became more frequent. Despite being surrounded by fans and family, he felt isolated. The weight of keeping up appearances was heavy. He didn't want to disappoint his supporters or damage the legacy he and Marissa had built. More importantly, his faith and personal values made it hard to even consider that the marriage might be falling apart. For years, he told himself things would get better, that love would win, but every effort to heal their relationship seemed to fail. Marissa had changed, and Bill could feel it, though he didn't know why. He was a man of faith, loyalty, and deep emotions, and the silence in his home was louder than any applause he received on stage. It was becoming clear that something had to give. One evening, while preparing documents for a new music project, Bill stumbled upon some unexpected financial paperwork. What started as a routine review quickly turned into a shocking revelation. He found records of large financial withdrawals, investments he hadn't been informed about, and bank accounts he didn't even know existed. At first he thought it was an error, maybe something Marissa had mentioned in passing that he had forgotten, but as he dug deeper, he realized the situation was far more serious. For years, financial decisions had been made behind his back. He felt betrayed not just by the money issues but by the secrecy. With a heavy heart, he confronted Marissa. The conversation that followed was one of the hardest in his life. She admitted to making risky financial moves without telling him, but it wasn't just about money. That moment opened the door to a flood of hidden truths, emotional distance, unspoken resentments, and a realization that the love they once shared had slowly faded. Bill was crushed. The woman he trusted with his life had kept him in the dark. For years, it wasn't just the finances. It was the broken trust that hurt the most. After many painful conversations and much soul-searching, Bill and Marissa quietly agreed to end their marriage. There were no public fights, no tabloid headlines, and no dramatic social media posts. just a quiet decision between two people who had once loved deeply but had grown apart. They chose to keep the details of their divorce private, not to fuel gossip but to protect the dignity of what they once had. Still, rumors spread. Fans who noticed Marissa's absence and Bill's changed demeanor began to speculate, but Bill remained silent for years. He focused on his music, his ministry, and his healing. He avoided interviews on the topic, not out of shame but out of respect. Ending a decades-long marriage was not a decision he took lightly. It felt like losing a part of himself. He struggled with questions that haunted him every night. Could he have saved it? Did he miss the warning signs? Should he have spoken up sooner? In private, Bill grieved deeply. His silence wasn't weakness, it was his way of dealing with something too painful to explain in words. Even after the divorce, Bill wrestled with deep emotional pain. He had spent his entire life building something meaningful, not just music, but a family and a life rooted in faith. Now, that foundation had been shaken. For a man who stood for love, forgiveness, and unity, the end of his marriage felt like a personal failure. He questioned himself every day. What did I do wrong? Could I have tried harder? Did I love enough? These thoughts ran through his mind during sleepless nights. He feared judgment not from fans, but from himself. He had always believed in lasting love, but reality had proven more complex than the fairy tale. Yet over time, Bill began to heal. He turned to prayer, his music, and the people who still believed in him. He realized that divorce, while painful, was not the end of his story. It was a chapter, a difficult one, but still just a part of his greater journey. He started to understand that acknowledging the truth, no matter how hard, was a brave step forward. And for the first time, he found peace in the honesty. At the age of 90, Bill Gaither finally chose to speak publicly about what he had been through. It wasn't a dramatic press conference or a bitter tell-all. Instead, it was a gentle, heartfelt message. He talked about the silence he had kept for so long, the pain he had carried alone, and the importance of speaking the truth, not for attention but for healing. His words were honest and full of grace. He didn't blame Marissa, he didn't point fingers. He simply shared his journey. He talked about love, disappointment, betrayal, and recovery. He shared how music helped him survive, how faith gave him hope, and how telling the truth gave him strength. Fans who had admired him for years felt even closer to him. They saw not just a gospel legend, but a man real, broken, and brave. Bill's honesty reminded everyone that even those who seem strongest can face heartbreak, but with faith, courage, and time, healing is possible. His story became not just one of loss, but of resilience, and a powerful reminder that it's never too late to find your voice and speak your truth. After the divorce, Bill Gaither found himself in unfamiliar territory. For a man whose life had always been guided by purpose, ministry, and family, the silence in his home felt overwhelming. But he did what he had always done in times of pain. He turned to his faith and his music. Gospel music, to Bill, had never been just about melody or performance. It was a form of prayer, a lifeline, a bridge between human suffering and divine comfort. During his quietest, darkest moments, he sat at his piano and allowed his emotions to flow into his songs. He didn't try to create hits or impress anyone. He simply let the music carry his heart. In those private sessions, Bill began to rediscover pieces of himself he thought were lost. He poured his sorrow, regret, and hope into new melodies. Some of those songs would eventually make their way into performances, while others remained personal treasures, musical letters to God and to himself. Slowly, the heaviness began to lift. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in whispers, in small victories, and in the quiet comfort of knowing he was still loved, still useful, and still strong in spirit. His choice would have a profound impact in the world. He was plagued by the anxiety of being judged by his peers, his followers, and even his own family. It felt like a personal setback, to acknowledge in public that his marriage was ending. Ultimately, though, Bill realized he could no longer continue to live in denial. He was forced to make a terrible but essential decision for his own recovery. The public breakdown. The public breakdown first signs to the world. Why now? Bill decides it's time to speak up. After remaining silent for years, why? Because he is prepared to recover on a private and public level at this point. He believes that it's more important to move on in a healthy manner than to dwell on the past or the divorce. The interview. Bill talks candidly about the difficulties, the suffering, and the lessons he has learned from the divorce. In an interview with a reliable journalist, he admits that despite their love for one another, there were unseen things that had caused tension in them. Recognizing his role during the interview, Bill admits his involvement in the marriage's dissolution. He freely discusses the difficulties of juggling a well-known career with a personal life that needs care and attention. The recovery process. Bill acknowledges that recovery is a process and that he is not flawless. He considers the value of communication, self-care, and striking a balance between his personal and professional lives. His narrative is one of development and comprehension rather than resentment. The public started to notice the subtle indications of instability in Bill's marriage as he battled his inner demons. Little things like Bill's increasingly solemn manner in interviews, the absence of loving grokes on social media and less appearances, with Marissa at events where at first signs close friends and admirers began to wonder whether something was amiss for as long as possible. Bill and Marissa made an effort to maintain appearances. They continued to publish images of their familiar, a united face. However, it was becoming impossible to ignore Thephasis. The strain between the pair was starting to be seen by Bill's super tertiary had stood by him through thick and thin. The once happy pair who had shared so much of their lives on social media was now barely interacting. Additionally, Bill was finding it increasingly to handle the strain to uphold the appearance of a flawless marriage. Rumors started to circulate. The reason for their separation was conjectured in tabloid articles. Was it a midlife crisis, shaving, financial difficulties, or was it something else entirely? The paparazzi trailed Bill and Marissa tiles like moments of awkwardness and discomfort that further reinforced the suspicion. Furthermore, despite Bill's best efforts to maintain the appearance of a flawless family, it became evident that the truth was too significant to hide. Breaking the silence, the choice. Two mixed reactions. One of the most surprising and comforting things for Bill was the unwavering support from his fans and the broader Christian community. Many people, even those who had no personal experience with divorce, offered words of kindness, prayers, and messages of encouragement. Letters poured in, some handwritten, some digital, but all filled with heartfelt messages. They thanked Bill not just for his music, but for being brave enough to open up about his pain. They reminded him that his worth wasn't defined by his marriage, but by his heart, his faith, and the love he had given to others for so many years. Church leaders reached out to, some offering spiritual guidance and others simply listening. In a world that often judges public figures harshly, Bill was embraced with compassion. People understood that he was human, and that even the strongest faith journeys come with storms. This support helped Bill rebuild his emotional foundation. It reminded him that he was not alone. Just as he had comforted so many through his music, now others were comforting him. That kind of spiritual reciprocity gave Bill the strength to keep moving forward, even on days when grief threatened to pull him back. As Bill continued to reflect on the past, he began to gain a deeper understanding of love and loss. He realized that sometimes, even deep love can run its course. It doesn't always end in anger or hatred. It can end in silence, in drifting apart, or in unspoken misunderstandings. For years, he had believed that love could fix everything, and while that belief wasn't wrong, he came to see that love also requires truth, openness, and mutual effort. He remembered the early days of his marriage to Marissa, the laughter, the music, the shared dreams. He didn't regret those moments. They were real, and they were beautiful. But he also understood now that holding on too tightly to a fading dream can cause more pain than letting go. Letting go wasn't about failure, it was about honesty, about admitting that sometimes two people grow in different directions, and that's okay. Bill forgave himself for the silence he had kept. He forgave Marissa for the mistakes she made. He forgave the situation for being more complicated than he had ever imagined. And with that forgiveness came freedom, a quiet, gentle peace that settled in his soul and made space for new beginnings. Turning 90 is a milestone few people reach, and Bill Gaither did not take it for granted. Despite the heartbreak of divorce and the years of emotional struggle, he remained full of purpose and drive. He saw his 90s not as an end, but as a new chapter, a chance to live honestly, make new memories, and continue sharing his gifts with the world. He began appearing more frequently in interviews and church events, no longer avoiding questions about his personal life. His honesty touched people even more than his music. Many found healing through his story. Others found courage to face their own hidden pain. Bill also started mentoring younger gospel artists, offering not just musical advice but life wisdom. He reminded them that success is not just about stage presence or vocal talent, it's about authenticity, integrity, and spiritual strength. Even in his advanced years, Bill's energy and presence remained strong. His voice, both literal and symbolic, continued to guide, uplift, and inspire. For fans who had followed him for decades, it was moving to see a man who had faced so much and still stood tall. Not perfect, but real. Not untouched by pain, but unbroken by it. Bill Gaither's story isn't just about divorce or a broken marriage. It's about the complexity of human relationships, the power of honesty, and the strength found in vulnerability. For so long, public figures were expected to be flawless, especially in Christian communities. Admitting to personal failure was often seen as a weakness, but Bill proved that true strength comes from facing the truth, even when it's painful. His journey reminds us that love is not always easy, that even when people have the best intentions, relationships can still falter. But it also shows us that healing is possible, that you can start over, even in your later years, that you are never too old to grow, to change, or to speak your truth. Bill's choice to finally open up has become a source of hope for countless people, those stuck in unhappy relationships, those suffering in silence, and those afraid to let go. He showed us that acknowledging reality isn't a betrayal of faith, it's an act of courage, and that sometimes the most powerful testimony comes not from perfection, but from pain. Today, Bill Gaither's name remains deeply respected in the world of gospel music. His songs continue to be sung in churches around the world. His albums are still played in homes, hospitals, and prayer groups. But beyond the music, it is his story, the man behind the songs, that leaves the most lasting legacy. Bill has shown that faith doesn't mean the absence of struggle. It means walking through the fire and coming out stronger. It means being honest about your failures and finding strength in your weakest moments. It means using your platform not just to entertain, but to heal. His willingness to share his painful truth at such a vulnerable time in his life has only deepened the love his fans have for him. His story will likely be remembered not just for the awards, the concerts, or the hit songs, but for the quiet bravery of a man who spoke from the heart, a man who lived with integrity, loved deeply, fell, and rose again. Bill Gaither's legacy is no longer just about gospel music. It's about what it means to be human, and how grace can shine even in the darkest moments.